All right, my name is Ben Chandler, Chair of the Kentucky State Board of Elections. Today is June the 6th, 2022. This is our June meeting. We are doing it as a hybrid. I am here in the office in the boardroom of the State Board of Elections. We've got several members on Zoom. We've got one member, Jerry Johnson, who is also here with me. And we appear to have every other member with the exception of Dwight Sears, who had a family medical situation that had to be attended to, and he will, as I understand it, probably miss the meeting. With that, I would like to have all of the members introduce themselves, and I'll call on them as I see them on the screen. Lynn Lane.
Good afternoon. I'm Lynn Lane. I'm the retired county clerk from Ballard County, and I am a board member.
Sherry Whitehouse.
Good afternoon, everyone. Member Sherry Whitehouse, Bullitt County.
Corey Skolman. You're on mute, Corey. At least we didn't hear you. Well, let's let Corey work on that, and we'll go to Deanna Brangers.
Hi, Deanna Brangers, a member, Jefferson County.
And James Lewis.
James Lewis, the Todd County Clerk member, Leslie County.
And we've got our Secretary of State, Michael Adams. Michael.
Hi, Michael Adams, Secretary of State, non-voting member.
And Corey, you're back with us. Is your volume working now?
I think so. For some reason, there was a little glitch. Corey Skolnick, member, Jefferson County.
Excellent. Very good. We've also got with us the president of the County Clerks Association. Jason, if you would.
Jason Denny, Anderson County Clerk, and yes, the current president of the KCCA.
We've also got with us 3 staff members here in the room with us. You all want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, starting with you, Karen.
Karen Sellers, Executive Director, State Board of Elections.
Richard House, Assistant Director, State Board of Elections. Taylor Brown, General Counsel.
We've also got on the screen Rachel Pointer, who is our financial person here at the board. And let's see, we appear to have Tom Watson and Sheila Walker also with us, although they are very humbly avoiding having their picture on the screen. All right.
There he is.
There's Tom. Hello, Tom. The first thing we need to do is approve the minutes, and I assume that you all would rather I not read them. Mr. Secretary, you often have changes. Do you this time?
I do not. Thank you.
All right. I'll accept a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Motion by member Lewis, second by member Johnson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Very good. Our next item is to certify the vote totals for the primary election that took place on June the 17th of 2022. And then issue certificates of nomination to candidates who received the highest number of votes in those primary elections. That is pursuant to KRS 118.365(1). Do we have any, well, first of all, let me accept a motion to certify these results. And if I can get a motion and a second, we will move into discussion.
I'll make that motion.
A motion by member Johnson, second by member Lane. And now, do we have some discussion about this subject? And Karen, do you want to, or Richard, or either one of you want to tell us where we are? Because I understand that we've got some exceptions in the counties here in the state, and we've got some challenges. So if you'd like to explain that to us, that'd be great.
I'm going to defer to Taylor.
All right.
He's been involved in those
Very good. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the moment, we have 6 contests, elections that have filed for petitions of recount in various counties throughout the state. They're in the process right now of setting a bond as required by the statute that governs the recounts.
Now, Taylor, it might be instructive for you to let the public understand the difference between a recount and a recanvass.
Sure. So recanvass is free to the candidates, and it's, a basic once over to make sure that the count is accurate. The recount can be more hands-on. It can be a hand recount, or it could be a machine recount. If it's a hand recount, then we're actually going to get the ballots out, look at them. This is a vote for X, or this is a vote for Y. It's a vote for Smith or Jones. If it's machine aided, the machine helps in that. The hand recount is more time intensive than the machine. It's also more costly to the candidate, as the recount is something that the candidate has to pay for themselves. So right now, we're in the process of figuring out what that cost would be in the various courts where these have been filed. So far, I just got one right when the meeting started here for Oldham County. So far, we've only had 2 that have actually set what that cost would be. And I anticipate throughout the week here is when we're going to be in court for the rest of them. So I think by the end of this week, we should know what the cost to the candidates for these recounts would be, and whether they choose to go forward with the recounts. If they do, we have the recount, then the judge will certify the results of the recount, and then we'll know our winner 1,000%, and we'll be done with that. But because that process is ongoing, we can't certify a winner while the proceedings are still occurring.
So we've got, as I understand it, we've got 6 elections that are being contested at the moment.
Correct.
In court.
Correct.
So all other elections that have taken place, that took place in the Commonwealth on election day, June 17th, 2022, are ready to be certified.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Mr. Secretary, I would imagine that you would have something to say about this.
I would. I'm going to save my my policy commentary for my report, but I do have a couple of questions. First off, if there's an interest, I can walk through the specific differences between the election night reporting and the final numbers that you all have in front of you. There were some changes. We found some innocent errors, but errors nonetheless. No outcomes were changed, but I'm happy to walk the board through that. Second, I want to clarify, none of these elections that we just referenced is being contested. There is a statute in our law for contesting an election. None of these individuals are contesting the election. None of them has alleged any fraud. None of them has alleged any corruption. None has alleged any administrative error or clerical error. They could have done that if they'd chosen to, but they did not. So none of these elections is being contested. I would like to ask Taylor, if I may, is it your view that we are not able to go ahead and certify these results as a matter of law, or is that just a recommendation?
The way I read it, Mr. Secretary, I can get you the exact statute here.
Let me first ask, if they're not contesting the election, what is it that they're doing?
They're asking for a recount.
Well, isn't that definitionally, isn't that an election contest or not?
It
is not.
As part of a contest, you may request a recount. A contest is, I think this is kind of what Secretary Adams alluded to. A contest is usually alleging more than just a miscount.
Well, can you ask for a recount if you're not contesting?
Yes.
You can. There's a separate ability that just for intellectual reasons, they're asking for a recount, not to try to change the result in the election.
They're not alleging that there was any kind of voter fraud that led to an outcome that wasn't expected. They are simply asking that we bring the ballots out and count them.
Well, all right. I don't really understand this procedure because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me why someone would ask for a recount if they don't think that anything was wrong in the election.
Mr. Chairman, could I just note real fast that some of these individuals actually see on their own social media that they lost and they know they lost, and they have no expectation of changing the outcome, nor have they alleged what they would need to allege to have the outcome change. So if this is something that we want to discuss with our counsel in a private session, I understand that. But regardless, I do think that we actually have the jurisdiction if we choose to go and certify the winners of all 6 of these races.
Well, Taylor, what is your view of that?
So, and if you all, we can take it to executive since it is pending litigation if you all like. If not,
Well, first of all, let me ask you this. If we were to certify the result in those elections, does that cause the actions that these people are taking to be moot?
I think we can go either way. If we want to certify them, we can, because ultimately what I was getting at the statute here, it's 120.0951. The court, when these are all said and done, the court is going to issue an order to us directing the certificate go to who the court has found to be the winner. So I don't think it will change. So it shouldn't matter. If the recounts uncover a different count and there is a new winner, then simply what would happen with the judge would then issue in his order to us, State Board, you shall issue a certificate for candidate X, and then we would do that. I think you can go either way. It's ultimately the judge's order that is going to matter here. So,
Well, given that, it would seem to me that the safest approach would be to go ahead and certify the others and leave these 6 until a judge rules.
Yeah, I think it's, this is a non-legal opinion, obviously, but I think considering that people have a right to request a recount, considering that there's 6 people who have done so, and they're now in the hands of the court, that it would be somewhat thumbing our nose at the courts as much as anything to not wait and rely on their findings before we certify. So I would personally be opposed to certifying elections of any court at the time.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on this? I would tend to concur with Member Johnson that just out of an abundance of caution, and I think Secretary Adams is probably correct. We do have the authority to go ahead and certify these 6 elections also. But it seems to me, since they are in court, at least my thought would be along the lines of what Member Johnson just expressed. Do any of the other members have any thoughts about this?
Having gone through a recount, Chairman Chandler, and having the court reverse the decision of the county board, we had, as county board members, issued the certification. Court then directed us to issue a new certification for the candidate he declared to be the winner.
So would that mean then, Member Lewis, that you would agree with us that we should wait till the court decides?
I'm not sure I do.
All right.
Simply because I think the board has the, option. Well, I'm not sure it's an option. I think we probably should certify the winners on election day, and then if first they change and the court directs otherwise, then we'll do a new certification.
Hey, Taylor, we've not been stayed from any certification, have we, in any of these matters?
we have not.
Nope.
Okay, so I guess, my thoughts would be that, as I listen to Taylor, I don't like to be anywhere in the shoulds. Well, it shouldn't matter. It should this, it should that. So, and as James was saying, they would just recertify. So then my question would be, why are we here? So my vote would be, because that could be for any, we could just say that, no matter if it's, they're asking for recounts, then that could be a number of people, and then we could get ourselves in a situation. So I'm not I don't feel comfortable with the shoulds, or it could be okay, and we could just recertify. I think if we have to recertify, I don't know, it just feels like we're not doing our job. If we have 6 people out there in court wanting to recount, why would we not just wait for those 6 and certify the others that are definites? I like to stay on the side of definites. Like we have, 6 that are in court and we don't know the answer to. So why would we certify something we don't have the true definite answer to? So I'm going to lean more towards we certify everything but the 6.
All right, anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Yes.
I haven't looked at the law, so I'm unsure what the law is on the question. But, I do feel like we're venturing into the territory of, if we were inclined to certify them, I would want to discuss that in closed session to get legal advice from Taylor and have a discussion outside of the public view, because we're entitled to sort of legal advice. But as a practical matter, I don't know enough currently about each of these 6 where I could even apply the law to the facts if we determined that as a general matter in certain instances we would be able to approve them. But what I do think we should be careful of is, if we decide as a practical matter or a philosophical matter or a matter of care that we don't want to certify the 6 today, I think it's important to say on the record that we're not reaching a legal conclusion that we can't, because I'd like to leave that option open in the future if there are situations where people file for a recount or a recanvass or something where the board feels like we do have the authority. So if we go the practical route today, I just want it to be clear that at least my vote wouldn't be that we don't have the legal authority to do it.
I totally agree with that. And I think Taylor and Mr. Secretary, we're pretty clear about that, aren't we? That we have the legal authority to do this if we want to.
Could I suggest that we go ahead and certify all the undisputed ones now, and then bring this up in executive session this afternoon, and then come out of that and make a decision about the other 6? Would that work?
I think that's good. I think that's a good idea. Let's do that. Do I have we already have motions to certify all of the others, all the other elections, excepting these 6. So I guess we just take a vote. Is everybody who is in favor of certifying all of the elections that took place on June 17, 2022, with the exception of the 6 that are in court at the moment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Do we have any nays? All right. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you to the board. All of those are certified, and we are going to move into executive session about the others. We've got that down on the list a bit, so we'll come back to it later. The next item on our agenda is a review and vote on memorandum of agreement for election security fund reimbursements to counties who purchase voting equipment pursuant to an MOA, the MOA. And Graves and Hickman County are the 2 at issue today. Graves is requesting $75,000 and Hickman is requesting $15,000. Karen, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, this is another 2 of our counties who have made requests for reimbursement for election equipment they have purchased here in 2022. Graves is eligible and has requested $75,000. Hickman is eligible and has requested $15,000. This is the same memorandum of agreement that we will prepare for the counties that the board approved back in March at the March meeting when we had a number of counties. And since that day, we've been bringing counties as we get their paperwork and meet the criteria, and their election equipment has been delivered, and we receive all the appropriate paperwork, which we have now for Graves and Hickman, and I would put forth for those 2 counties to be approved so we can move forward with their reimbursement under the HAVA funding, security funding.
Anybody have any questions about this? All right, hearing none, I will accept a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I make that motion.
A motion by member Lane. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Lewis. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Very good. Moving on, election discussion. Karen,
Well,
have we already, is this what we're going to move into the special, into executive session?
yes, we can,
All
we
right.
can do
I
that.
think we should do that under the notion, of course, the accurate notion that we're talking about pending litigation. All right, we'll move on to the County Clerk Association. Clerk Denny, do you have some words for us?
The primary is behind us. From what I'm hearing from most county clerks, it was a better experience than some of us might have anticipated. I think there were some counties that had that were probably a little bit more stressed than others. We have to remember there were 2 years of legislation passed that we had to implement very quickly. We had House Bill 564 and House Bill 574, in addition to a lot of other small bills that really changed the way we conducted elections. I think we were all worried about, yes, we had went from 1 day in 2019 to 19 days in 2020, and it was smooth. But yet now we're backing up, and yes, we added 4 days from our previous 2019 rules. But was 4 days enough? Was 4 days too many? And I think we're still, we're going to have a wrap-up meeting with KCCA in July to gauge that for input in the future. But in general, I think things went really well for the primary. It could have been a whole lot worse. We had, what I'm hearing statewide, not a lot of phone calls at the Attorney General's office, Secretary of State's office, State Board. We do feel that we're going to sit down with SBE, with Secretary of State's office, and find a few ways that we might come with some better ideas, some ideas that we can work within the legislation and do internally. But in general, I do want to address these recounts. And I'm fine to go on record with this. We have a group going around the state that has done nothing but want to get into the machines. And I feel that's what they're doing. They're not contesting the election, as we said. I think they're wanting to get into the machines to count the paper ballots because they can't wait on the process that we're putting in place to do the very same thing. I want to let the public know that there is a committee working on the process to go in. There's pilot programs that we're going to go into the machines afterward and test that and count ballots by hand to see. But they're anxious. I understand that. There was a letter that was sent out in March by the Secretary of State's office to help draft that letter. Most every one of you all signed on to that letter. The County Clerks Association voted as the leadership body to sign on to that letter. The County Attorneys Association signed on to that letter, and so did the County Sheriff's Association, State Sheriff's Association. I don't believe a one of us would be here in these jobs if we doubted elections in Kentucky. I myself would be the first one to speak up or resign if I couldn't do anything about it. And I'm here. And it bothers me in Kentucky that they would doubt that, and they won't sit down at the table and discuss it and work out a plan. But if this is the way they want to go about it, it's the legal way to go about it. They can pay for this recount and they can have their study ahead of time, and that's fine. But I don't doubt our elections won.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that strong statement. And does anybody else want to either ask the President of the County Clerk Association any questions about this or have a comment on his statement?
I'd like to ask a couple of questions, and I don't know if it's the appropriate time, but,
Linda Johnson.
you know, some of the things that we talked, and he referenced the changes that were put into place sort of all at once over 2 years. And so a couple of the things that were of interest to me was allowing local clerks to, boards of election to determine exactly how they would provide access to voters. And so in some counties, they went with all the precincts, and then in others, we had a very limited number of precincts, but we had voting centers. Have you had any, and this is really for sort of everybody, have we gone far enough to know, did it work pretty well with what we approved? Are there still instances that we're going to have to review? So how do you view the way those local plans work?
What I've heard is they work pretty well. I believe the county clerk and their boards, I believe this from the start, and I believe it now, and I'll keep pushing, know the pulse of their communities. They know what their community needs and what their community wants within the law. I do feel like from the 3 early days of voting, we were way over prepared and overmanned in our county. Instead of using the office, we used outside facilities, which worked just fine, but we're definitely going to back that down. We could have taken twice the voters and not been busy with our 2 facilities on early voting. On election day, we had 3 facilities, and we could have done it with 1, 2 would have been better, but 3 was way too many, even with way bigger turnout, which we still don't believe we'll see in the fall. In Anderson County, primaries decided everything pretty much, except for a few small races. So we know in the fall, we doubt that we're going to see the uptick in a lot of turnout. But then there's other counties that are going to have a lot of general races. So that's why it needs to, and they did a very good job here of listening to the county boards of what we knew our turnout. Now, I was disappointed in our turnout. We had 28.5%, which well above the state average, but I was still disappointed because there was a lot of primary. So as clerks, it's the same work for a 74% turnout as it was by 28.5, the 2 elections, November 20 or this one. So it's a disappointment when the turnout's not there. The same work goes into it, and that's what I think the general public doesn't realize. But the individual decision-making process, being allowed to be a part of this has been great, I believe. And as we get into the July wrap-up meeting, we're going to Jenny Wiley. Hopefully, I know this group will surely be there, SOS, and we're going to sit down and we're going to do the do's and don'ts, what worked, what didn't work, what should I have done, and we're going to sit around and that's all we're going to discuss. It's within the law. What can we do better in November?
Well, it sounds like the law and the way the law has been administered at the state level provides the county clerks with flexibility that they need, understanding that all 120 of our counties are very, very different and have different circumstances.
Yes, sir, totally. It worked out great. And having a board that listens, having the secretary and Jenny and Heather and they're at the Secretary of State's office that listen when you call them and they'll listen to input has been very valuable for this whole process. Having you all allow this group here to help make those decisions means the world. We couldn't ask for a better board and a better board employees that do the job. So thank you all.
I think I can speak on behalf of everybody here that we've got 120 county clerks in this state. They're both Republicans and Democrats. They have probably, well, I shouldn't even say probably, without a question, have been under the most difficult election circumstances in the last 2 or 3 years that anybody could imagine. And certainly in the history of this state, I don't think we've had these kinds of changes. First, a sea change to deal with the pandemic election, and then additional changes this time that everybody had to adapt to. And I just think it's really quite remarkable the job that our 120 county clerks have done under these circumstances. And I'd also like to say that with all of that said, the fact that our state board of elections, our local boards of elections, our elected county clerks, as far as I know, are unanimous in the thought that we have elections that are full of integrity and that can be relied upon by the people of this state. And that's a pretty remarkable thing.
And you said something a minute ago about it being, with clerks of Democratic persuasion and Republican. You have to remember that Kentucky is different than a lot of states. We have 120 separate boards with party parity, independent of each other, that have sent their results in that are being certified here today. So it's not one group statewide looking over all our results. We all individual attest to those results before it gets sent to the Secretary of State's office.
It's really remarkable when you think about it, because as you say, we've got 120 counties. Each county has Democrats on their board of elections and Republicans on their board of elections. Those individuals in those counties have agreed that their county election was held accurately and with integrity. And in each one of those 120 have sent those results up here, and the people on the state level have come to the same conclusion. So we've got a remarkable number of qualified, involved individuals from one end of this state to the other who are giving it as their personal opinion on the ground that these elections are to be relied upon as accurate. And that's a pretty remarkable thing.
And you can go one step further. Your election officers are party parity, whether it's a precinct level or a vote center level. So you have one more level of D's and R's to report anything that they see out of the country. And we see less and less issues in the last 3 or 4 years with the way we're running elections than we used to see.
It's really a remarkable thing when you think about it, what we've been able to do here in Kentucky to put together these elections. And the idea that somehow someone can go around and suggest that they're not, that they cannot be relied upon, in my mind, given all that we've discussed and all the safeguards that are in place and the extraordinary party parity that's in place, it's just absurd to suggest that these elections are not being done properly and accurately.
Amen.
One final question.
Yes, sir.
Does the law require, as written, that we have to approve a new set of plans for the fall? I mean, we could accept the same, but I'm saying, are we required to acknowledge and accept a set of plans for the fall like we did in the primary?
That's a good question.
My impression when we talked about the law and all in there, if we made any changes, we definitely had to come back before the board. But if we didn't, all we would have to do is same as previous and let it roll. Good. Now, am I right there? Is that not pretty much the way we?
Yeah, that's how we discussed it. If the county, if we work forward the primary, they want to roll with that, in November, we're going to ask them to send something to that effect that we'd like to use our May 2020 plan for November, said 2022 plan for November 2022. If they have felt the need to tweak it and send us whatever changes there might be, but no, I don't read it to require sending the same plan twice a year.
Which is maximum flexibility. That means that the clerks don't have to reinvent the wheel if they like what they did, and if they feel like they need to make some changes, let us know what they are, and we'll go from there. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions for Clerk Denny? All right, looks like a lot of satisfaction there on the screen, Mr. Denny. Thank you.
Our county clerks conference is in June in Owensboro, 19th through the 22nd. Hope some of you all can come down. I know your very own Dwight Sears will be there to speak on security cameras based on legislation on Tuesday, I guess, is it?
All right. We ought to all at least try to support Dwight.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, we ought to come and support you all too, because it really, in many respects, what you guys have done in the last 2 or 3 years has been heroic under the worst of circumstances.
We've all done it together.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible. All right, Mr. Secretary, floor is yours.
Thank you. I want to take off a little bit on what Jason just said and Ben just said. I agree with all of that, and I appreciate all those points in support of public confidence in our system. First, I want to thank everybody for a successful election. Certainly, all the members of this board, all the staff, all of my staff, and most important, the county clerks and their staffs and our poll workers. You're still hearing other problems around the country that we're not seeing here in our state: political problems, lack of confidence, administrative problems, and I think we've done quite a bit better than we've seen in our rival states. A second point I'd like to make about voters trusting our system. I do have actually polling on this, data on this, but I've got something I think is even better, which is this. In 119 of our county clerks races, and we had, of course, our primary races in May for county clerk, among other races. You've seen in some other states some pretty out there candidates running for Secretary of State, running for county clerk. We didn't have that in Kentucky. In 119 of 120 counties, you didn't have any sort of fringe person running for Secretary of State, running for county clerk, alleging that the votes were rigged or what have you. We had that in one county out of 120. And in that county, that candidate only got 28% of the vote in a two-way race, lost by whatever that is, 44 points. So I'm really proud that not just do we have polling that shows that voters trust our system, we actually have election results that show that voters trust our system. These sorts of stunts that we're seeing from some folks aren't resulting in success. It's not resulting in candidate recruitment. And on the rare occasion when they get someone to run, it's not resulting into that person getting the confidence of the voters. Last point on these recount actions. These have been brought, as someone said, I forgot who, by a particular faction in our state. These are a bit hypocritical because this faction actually won some elections in May. They didn't ask for those votes to be recounted. They only asked for the votes to be recounted when they lost. And that's not a good way to make decisions. Either you trust our process in our state or you don't, and you can't pick and choose, I don't think. But in any event, we've got, as was noted, a contest statute in Kentucky. If you believe that there's been fraud or corruption or administrative or clerical error, you've got every right to challenge that election. But none of these 6 candidates did that. They could have, they chose not to. And the reason they chose not to is they had no evidence whatsoever. And even if they thought they could come up with evidence, they didn't feel comfortable alleging to a court that they would find evidence because they could be sanctioned for lying to the court. These people themselves don't believe that the process was rigged. They say so on their own social media. They say that they know they lost. So why are we going through all this nonsense? It's because we have a loophole in our state law that says that a candidate that loses can petition a recount. As you all may remember, we had a frivolous recanvass request in 2020. We had an individual who ran for state rep in Jefferson County and lost by, I think it was 19 or 20 points and still asked for the recanvass. Well, we've never had that statute abused that way in the past, but we did in 2020. And so we had to go ahead and do the recanvass. Our office did, the Jefferson County Board of Elections did. So we wasted taxpayer resources, we wasted the time of our public officials, and we did the recanvass. And of course, it didn't flip the election. So in the next session of the legislature last year, I went to them and asked that they close that loophole, that they require that to have standing to petition for a recanvass that you lose within 1% of the vote. And so that enabled us to avoid frivolous recanvass requests. Well, recounts are a far more laborious process than just a recanvass. Recanvass you can do in a couple hours, maybe. It's just a matter of checking all the tapes and checking the machines and doing the math again. Recounts are a much more intrusive sort of process. They require a great deal more time on the part of public officials. And they also include the courts and waste the time of our judges that are trying to get through their own backlogs of civil and criminal actions. So I'm going to go to the legislature next year. I'm going to have a number of suggestions to keep improving our system. But one of those is going to be that we have the same sort of standard that you have a 1% loss or less in order to have standing to file for a recount. Of these 6 individuals that petitioned for recounts, 5 of them didn't ask for a recanvass. In other words, they didn't think that the race was close. If they had, they would have asked for a recanvass. They didn't. They totally bypassed that and waived that right to a recanvass and just filed for a recount. I want to draw a real tight distinction between the kind of contest that I was talking about, where people are alleging something was wrong, and the recount statute that we're talking about. The goals of these people that are doing this are to sow fear and doubt that's inappropriate and groundless in our election process. And so they're trying to use the recount law to do that, but the recount law doesn't permit them the sort of inquiry that they're demanding. What they want, I guess, is some sort of cyber ninjas type approach like you saw in Arizona, where non-experts got into the machines, ripped them open and ruined them. Millions of dollars worth of equipment, ruined it, looking for bamboo ballots and stuff like that. So I want to thank Taylor, who just spoke in court in LaRue County a couple of hours ago on this point, made this point about the statute, that the statute allows for a recount if the candidate can post bond to pay for the costs. It's not all the costs, it's some portion of the costs. Obviously, the cost of our time, the court's time isn't reimbursed, but some costs of the recount are covered by the bond. But the recount is limited to a recount. It's not a process for inspecting the machines. It's not a process for the candidate to get into the machine, which is what the candidate in LaRue County asked for. She was denied. The court was clear that this is not a contest statute that can allow some sort of independent inquiry into the machines. There is already a process for inspecting these machines. Every single machine in our state was reviewed and inspected before the election. By law, there is a process for our board, the State Board of Elections, to inspect every single one of these machines. There's a process by law, by statute, for every single county board of elections to inspect these machines. And may I note that these are public proceedings. If you want to go see these machines being inspected to make sure that they're accurately reporting the votes that are put into them, you can go watch anytime you want to do that. When we have one of these proceedings, you can go to the state one and you can go to the county one if you want to do that. To my knowledge, none of these individuals who are trying to sow doubt in our elections took advantage of that. And now they're demanding some sort of post-election inspection of the process, not by election officials, not by people who are competent to actually inspect these machines, but by themselves and their supporters. Well, we're not a banana republic. We've got laws to prevent that sort of vigilantism. And I'm confident that the courts, if these individuals do manage to somehow post bond, these are all underfunded candidates who are unserious people who couldn't raise money. But if somehow they raise money and are able to carry out these recounts, I don't expect the results are going to change at all. Certainly not substantively, certainly not enough to flip the outcome of a race. And then we'll be able to move on. And then we'll fix this in the next session. And by the way, the judge did just post an order for bond in Oldham County. I just got the order in front of me. It is $21,700. My understanding is it'll be about probably 6 figures in these 2 congressional races. Those are large districts, and so you've got a lot of votes to have to recount. My guess is neither of those individuals is going to have access to the resources. Again, these are individuals that didn't even raise tens of thousands of dollars running for Congress, let alone $100,000 for a pointless recount. Whether the individuals who ran for the legislature were able to post these lesser amounts is still to be seen. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Secretary. Karen, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't repeat again, but all of the words that were so eloquently said by Clerk Denny, Chairman Chandler, appreciate your work, Secretary Adams, all the hard work that the clerks did, the board did, the staff of State Board of Elections. We were trying to be available at every moment to help the clerks in any way we could possibly do to ensure that this election was carried on with the greatest of integrity, and it certainly was. I don't think anyone could dispute that at all. Just a couple of things want to report on. Risk limiting audit. Richard, I'll let him, we have a couple of meetings coming up.
We've scheduled a meeting for June 9th and June 30th this month. This is where we'll get into more of the development of the plan for Kentucky. So we should have some, for your all's next meeting, we should have some kind of report to give you on where that's going.
Thank you, Richard. I want to mention as well that at the last board meeting, under the financial report, Ms. Pointer mentioned negative interest, and I'm going to let her speak briefly about that, and then we will have additional follow-up later. So, Rachel, if you could.
Good afternoon. So I will admit that interest rates and the process of the interest rates at the state are not my strong suit. So we've been doing some crazy research here to make sure I have some information for you. I spoke to Karen and Richard about it. We would like to present you with a more in-depth talk about it when you actually have the financials in front of you for the next board meeting. Today is the last day for the board of financials to close with statewide accounting, so we cannot run those reports until tomorrow. So that's why we don't have them for you today. And they'll be available at the next board meeting. I think that we were talking about negative interest, and there was a lot of question about how negative interest is even possible. And so it is possible in our, I just wanted to talk a little bit, it is possible in our case because we are under the umbrella of the Commonwealth. So we invest our money with the Commonwealth, and we have no option. This is the only option that there is with the state. The biggest confusion on the negative interest is that it doesn't just include our interest. It is also a combination of, it's a combination of administrative costs that are incurred and a combination of the current change in the market value. So all of that is included in the interest rate. And sometimes, because right now, since the pandemic, to help mitigate the damage of the economy, the interest rates have been very, very low. So if we are gaining a very small portion of interest, then all of these other costs that are accumulated into that can drive it into the negative. And that is what we have been seeing. So it is a little more complicated than private investment because we are under the umbrella of the state. And I would like to provide you with some visuals and with your financials next month to make sure that it is a little bit clearer on that subject now. So we are saying negative interest in the fact that we also report these negative monthly totals on our semi-annual and our annual reports to the federal government. So we are reporting that to them. They are saying that this is also a common thing for right now because the market has been very volatile for the past several months. So we are reporting that to the federal government as well. So, do you have any questions that I can answer right now before we do a little bit in-depth conversation about that when your financials are in front of you?
Any questions? Anybody on the board? Sounds like you explained it pretty well, Rachel. Thank you. And we will look forward to digging into it a little bit more deeply next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. We just wanted to follow up with that. It was a discussion at the board meeting on May 17th. We wanted to make sure we at least brought it forth today. And like Rachel said, she felt like visuals might be a little better as she explains it, since we weren't able to provide any financials for this meeting at this date. So
I think the board was just, whenever we see an item that suggests we're losing money, we want to know why. Even if it's a little bit, it's an effort to take care of taxpayer money best we can.
Absolutely, absolutely. We will get back with you on that. So
all right.
So another thing that is going on with SBE, as the budget this year, 25 million was budgeted this year through the legislature and signed by the governor, 25 million over 2 years for election equipment. You know, in an effort to purposely as well bring all the counties up to certified equipment that provide a paper trail. And we have had one initial meeting with DLG, who has been willing to work with SBE and the Secretary of State's office to try to build a criteria, because we appreciated that they were glad to hear from us, because they are not well-versed in election equipment and didn't have a good understanding of what even certified election equipment means. So we've had one initial meeting, and now that the session is over, we're scheduling another meeting and going to work toward the criteria so we can start to help the counties understand about what that 12.5 million in FY23 and 12.5 million in FY24 can mean for them to upgrade their election equipment, or continue to upgrade current election equipment as well. So that will be going on here this month, and hopefully another report. We'll have another meeting and maybe be able to provide some information to KCCA as well. And now that the election is passed and we've kind of settled down a little bit, I'll be reaching back out to our work group regarding our office space. We kind of deferred some of that till after the election. It just seemed like a very busy time. So we'll be getting back into that this month, and we'll have something to report at the next meeting. One thing, the e-poll book work group, again, we had a work group that we had put into place in January, I believe, and we had a couple of meetings. House Bill 618 was signed into law, which requires SBE to work toward a certification by September 1st that e-poll books would have to fall just as election equipment falls under a certification process. So we'll continue to have that work group meet. And again, that's SBE, Clerk Denny's part of it, Secretary of State's office, and 2 of our board members. So now that we'll get back on that track so we can get that done by September 1st and be ready to make sure we follow the law that's going to be implemented by then under House Bill 618. One of the other things I want to mention, and part of this is also a compliment to our IT team. We made a concerted decision to bring the election night reporting in-house. We believe that was the right thing for us to do. And our IT team worked very diligently to create an election night reporting system by the May primary. I do want to say that they are continuing their work to further enhance the E&R election night reporting, and believe that it will have all the functionalities by the November election that the clerks have seen in the past. It's just bringing it in-house and getting that prepared along with some of the other duties of the IT team. They were working many hours a day to ensure that the election was held with integrity, the absentee portal. They were watching everything that comes through. They were building E&R, managing poll book, providing data. There was just so many things. I can't even begin to thank them enough for all the work they did. But I did want to compliment them for getting that ready for the primary, but by the public and the clerks will see something that will function more on what they have had in the past. And that concludes my report.
Great. Anybody have any questions for Karen? All right, very good. Thank you, Karen. Next thing on our agenda is other business. And if anybody has any other business, speak now or hold your peace until the next meeting. All right, hearing nothing, I will accept a motion to go into executive session to discuss pending litigation.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Member Johnson, second by Member Lewis. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Very good. We will come back after we get out of executive session and announce the next meeting date for the board.